you've often talked on this podcast, which I listen to, by the way, about how you often you'll talk about things because you're giving a talk to yourself almost, right?
Yeah, pretty much always.
Pretty much all the time.
This is the deep secret. The deep Aubrey secret is that every product I've created is something for me, and every talk I give is something that's going to help. And it's, of course, I'm thinking of other people too, but it's because I need it, and I recognize my state of inner being with everybody else. If I need it, everybody needs it, and if they need it, I need it. You know, like we're so less separate than we believe we are. So, I know that if I'm serving myself in a deep way, it's going to serve people. Otherwise, I'm just guessing. If I'm like, well, this doesn't really work for me, but I think it's going to work for them. How the fuck do I know?
Exactly. And if you make music like that, it's terrible.
Nail.
People can see through it. And people, non-musical people who don't even listen that deeply, they will still, it just doesn't resonate. Authenticity you can detect on different levels. But basically, this stuff is all my way of living, my way of understanding the world, and tools that I need. And I found that the music didn't exist that was perfect for my ketamine experience. There was playlists of different people, but I needed to make it to hear it myself. And it's quite weird to say this publicly, but the first experiences I had when it was finished were just so amazing. And it sounds like I'm just bigging up my album, but it didn't sound anything like it had come from me. And I had no idea where, it was like, this is the plants. Because even though ketamine's taking me there, it's, I had 5 years of regular DMT experiences, which, I now realize, because I've now stopped doing that, and I've now realized that I don't have to do that anymore, because the point of that was that energy was trying to get into this music, and that energy was trying to come out into the world. And it leads me to quite a cool story, which I'll share. So my probably best friend in the world is a guy called Dan, and he plays some of the synths on the album, some of the more generative, unusual, esoteric sounds on Welcome, on a couple of other tracks. And we shared DMT experiences since 2015. We discovered it together, and I first heard of it in 2001, and I thought that's something I will never be ready to do. And after 15 years of meditating, I was ready to do it, and dived in deep. And we've all had that experience here, I guess, but fucking hell. It's still processing the first one, let alone the following. And
just to be clear, these experiences are NN-DMT experiences, not
pure 15-minute, crystal type thing. And obviously it goes without saying, I don't recommend it. I don't not recommend it, but
that's the only place. That's the only place
Take
to
it
be,
as you
right?
will.
Right, I'm just gonna say that. But anyway, the first one I had was literally heaven. I just went straight to the deepest, safest, most perfect love God ever that I could ever and have ever experienced since. Like nothing has ever been like that. And I like to look back at this and try and figure out the patterns and the meanings behind these trips. But that first one was like a kind of, you need to come in here. What's going to come next is really important. And of course, they got harder and harder. And maybe my fear increased, I don't know, but it was all from the mimosa bark. And it started to seem to me like it was the mimosa spirit that was interacting with me and with Dan on each occasion. We would see the same kind of things, and she was this extraordinary geometric fractal goddess that's like in you and becomes you, and you know how it is, that kind of stuff.
I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is. No, exactly. The words don't work there.
And describing it is an interesting task.
The colors, we've managed to capture some of the colors outside, but they're never as vivid. But anyway, so I had increasingly scary experiences. They were never, I was never confronted with anything hostile, but I just got more and more scared of each one. But Dan, my friend, is more bold and would go for a heavier dose, and he'd had many on his own as well, and he would often get these very clear messages. He'd come out with like, okay, you must, he works on the land, he has a small holding farm, and he looks after his family, and lives quite off grid, and he would get quite clear messages about things to do in his life. I would just get these goddess investigations, and I'd be filled with music, and obviously that was the purpose, but I wasn't like, oh, this is how you resolve this relationship. It didn't provide me with way too out there for that. But anyway, so one time we were doing it together, and he would always go first because he was, again, bolder, and he'd had many experiences by this point, and so he describes this as he took the dose, maybe 30 milligrams, something like that. It's quite high, I think. And then, as usual, the goddess comes towards him, and then she goes, "This guy," pointing at me. "So this is not for you today. You've got to help this guy get this music out here."
Wow.
So it just literally comes with and just turns, just takes a swerve and points at me. And he's like, after when he recovered, he was like, that was interesting. She didn't want to talk to me today. She was like, it was a very, very clear message that he had to help me in, we don't know exactly what ways. And now I can look back, and I thought it was to do with Singularity, my previous album, which definitely has a strong DMT influence. But now I realize it was entirely about this one. And the way in which he helped me was he provided some of the sounds, but also the love and the support and the confidence to make what is an unusual album, but also, the support through the DMT, through helping me and sitting with me through those increasingly scary experiences. And then one day when I was done with it, that's when the album suddenly got written, and I look back and it's like, that was school. I was in school to make this record.
Yeah.
But it's so cool to think that happened in that way.
We have so much more help, seen and unseen, than we recognize. And this is the thing that I can attest to over and over again. It's that we think we might be alone. We think that the odds are against us. It's all daunting, but we're not taking into account this gigantic synchronous support from the universe, whatever you want to call it, whatever your cosmology and whatever your paradigm allows you to name it and nomenclature. It doesn't matter, but we're supported in some very deep ways. And I'm sure we all could recount countless stories, as yours was, of key moments where it's like, well, I got helped. I got helped a lot. And there's the humility to that, which is like, this isn't all me. Hardly. I don't know how much of it is me, actually, because every time I really take a clear look, it's like, I got so much support and so much help in this process. And sure, I made some choices, and I'll give myself some credit, but it was like, we're really, really guided.
Yeah, and I feel like in that, recounting that particular story, it's important for me to point out that I didn't then start to consider myself as a sort of unique or special person. I could do this. It wasn't so much that. It was a combination of the fact that I had an audience and that I'm having these experiences, and I, through my interest in psychedelics, I'd met all the people that could perhaps help this get out. And, it was like, it always goes back to that thing of being a channel rather than,
yes,
anything
and
else.
Your mastery of being able to create sound and create music was like, a lot of people might have that urge, but unless they've cultivated the 10,000 plus hours of being able to translate that into something at the level that you're able to, they can try their best. And that's all really important, and it's all super valuable. But the skill sets that you have then allow you to translate that into something else. So it's not like this pure, your mind goes blank and you just channel something. And I didn't even know what levers I was pushing, and I didn't even know the software, but the guides told me how to use the software. It doesn't work like that.
Oh yeah, I knew the software.
Like if you're going to write something, you need the vocabulary.
Yeah.
If you're like, when things come through me, they come through words. But my deep practice with words and poetry and writing has allowed me so that I can take the energy. It always comes with an energy, and I'll get the energy, and then I'll know the words will just flow. They'll flow right out because I feel the energy of it, and that's the gift.
Yeah.
And then my own like whole holding of my intellect, everything that I've accumulated, then just translates that in a way that actually, crystallizes it in the 3D.
Yeah, and it's interesting because for me, when you talk about those 10,000 hours, like for me, the desire to get as good as I can at sound design and creating sounds and dimensional music in particular, which is what I describe this as, comes from, the fuel for that in the early years was all the ego. It was like, I had like many people, probably everyone had a rough time at school, and, it wasn't at the right place perhaps, and had a desire to be cool, had a desire to be popular, wanted money, wanted a career, and also passionately loved and lived and breathed music. So the two things work together. But the amount of hours I spent, many of them in like living in my mum's house in her attic, just learning how to make all this stuff with no training, just time and failing. And it's almost like you have to learn how to control that totally before you can learn how to let go of it almost. Because this album, I know all the software, but really it was about letting go of the control of the music. It's quite hard to explain this, but there's no grid on any of the tracks. So there's no tempo, there's no marker points, there's no rhythms. But instead of that, there's the things that landed where they were supposed to land.